Hi, hello. I am Vladimir Kozin, member of the Russian Academy of Military Sciences and member of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences. I am also a lead expert at the Military Political Center of МГИМО, Russian Harvard equivalent, called Moscow State Institute of International Relations. I'm going to debate via the internet with you, my dear colleagues, on contemporary nuclear arms control. Unfortunately, the developments in this area are very disturbing and very alarming. Actually, nuclear arms control has completely stalled, and there are no breakthroughs in potential positive movement to contain the current nuclear arms control. The level of nuclear confrontation is also very high. Unfortunately, this process have been characterized by the demise of the INF Treaty after the United States of America unilaterally withdrawn from it. The United States is also decided not to ratify the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, teared off the Joint Comprehensive Action Plan known as Iranian Nuclear Deal, and some more facts and figures. What are they? Unfortunately, the current nuclear arms control can be characterized by the following features. First of all, it's a blurring distinction between nuclear offensive and nuclear defensive system. There is also a big uplift of military expenditures on modernization of nuclear forces, be them strategic or tactical. It is also a problem that there is a first nuclear strike concept existing in many nuclear weapon states. There is a wrong interpretation in the strategic stability terminology. There is also a neglection of the principle of equality and equal security in the nuclear weapons field. All nuclear weapons, also declared or non-declared, known as Nuclear 9, they have negatively responded to the international treaty signed in 2017 called the Treaty on the Prohibition of the Nuclear Weapons. So the overall situation is rather alarming. No doubt, such a nuclear arms race the humanity has brought from the last century to the current one can be complemented by two other arms control competitions, mainly missile defense arms race and space-based weapons arms race. There are more obstacles in this domain as well, especially between the two major nuclear powers, namely the United States of America and the Russian Federation. I can catalog nearly 13 such negative features. Well, the first is that the US has negative attitude to the resumption or to the extension of the New START. Second, the United States of America doesn't want to pull back all its tactical nuclear capabilities from Europe. Third, there is the desire of Washington to deploy extra nuclear-capable medium-range missiles that could fall into the category of the former scrapped INF Treaty. The USA frequently sends its heavy strategic bombers to fly over Europe and Asia-Pacific region. We are still having the Baltic air policing Air Force operation of a number of NATO member countries, including all three Western nuclear nations, the USA, the UK and France. They are taking part in this operation and having dual capable aircraft certified to carry nuclear weapons. We also are confronting with the first nuclear strike, preventive and preemptive, that are existing in the current nuclear posture review of the United States, or current nuclear strategy. Also, its strategy has been complemented by some other strategies, like escalation to de-escalation, launch on warning, and launch upon prior to launch. There is too much strategic offensive weapons and tactical nuclear weapons deployed in the vicinity of the Russian Federation, and US heavy strategic bombers are frequently taking part in military drills. For example, recently, last year, in October last year, the US heavy bomber named B-52H dropped a dummy, a mock nuclear device at the military drill testing site in Lithuania, just 60 kilometers from the Kaliningrad exclave, the Russian territory on the Baltic Sea coast. A number of US ballistic missile defense sites, like already commissioned in Romania and soon will be commissioned in Poland, can play a double-headed role. So besides housing ballistic missile defensive systems like interceptors, they can also put into the launching tubes offensive nuclear weapons and hypersonic missiles. And unfortunately, recently, Washington refused to repeat the famous Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev formula that nuclear war cannot be won and therefore it cannot be fought. If we compare just two nuclear strategies, namely the United States and the Russian Federation, in a very short, concise form, I should stress that the first, the US nuclear strategy, can be identified as non-conditional offensive nuclear deterrence, while Russian nuclear strategy is based on conditional defensive nuclear weapons. Certainly, if we talk about potential human and environmental damages of using nuclear weapons, it's a very sad scenario. And many Western scholars and experts have already calculated that, for example, using 500 kiloton nuclear bomb delivered on New York City or Moscow could kill nearly 5 million people in each site. And even low-yield nuclear devices of 5 kiloton dropped over Washington can kill nearly 100,000 people of that city. More gloomy scenario predict that in several hours after an all-out global nuclear war, 34 million people will die and 57 million people will be injured. It will be a devastated area and a great impact on flora and fauna, and much more destruction will be attained if water dams and nuclear power plants are destroyed during this nuclear attack. So what are the practical suggestions to avoid nuclear war and to contain the current nuclear arms race? Well, first of all, it should be a commitment of all nuclear powers, nuclear capable states, to commit to a no first use of nuclear weapons or to no first strike of nuclear weapons. It's the easiest way to do, and it can be reached as the first stage leading us to complete global nuclear zero. Second, the United States of America should ratify the Comprehensive Test-Ban Treaty. Third, the United States has to extend the New START from the year 2021, February. Also, the United States has to proliferate the Incidents at Sea Prevention Agreement signed in 1972 to strategic ballistic nuclear submarines and strategic attack submarines while sailing underwater to avoid collisions between them. Unfortunately, in the past, Soviet/Russian and American submarines of this type have collided with each other in 11 cases. And the world was lucky to avoid this kind of potential catastrophe. So NATO and USA should cancel the Baltic Air Policing Air Force operation in the Baltic Sea area over Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, plus Poland. And finally, spacefaring nations have to sign the International PARAS, or Prevention of Arms Race in Outer Space Treaty, and the Treaty of No First Employment of Weapons in Outer Space. So we are waiting for the nuclear-powered P5 summit to be held presumably in upcoming September in New York City at the premises of the United Nations General Assembly session. Moscow is working on a joint statement with other permanent members of the UN Security Council on the inadmissibility of any kind of nuclear war. It is very sad that in the light of the situation related to coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 Non-Proliferation Review Conference has been postponed to a later date, but not later than April 2021. As to the Russian side, it still believes that complete elimination of nuclear weapons is only possible within comprehensive and complete disarmament and under conditions of equal and indivisible security for all of us, including nuclear states, in accordance with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. There is a feeling in the Russian Federation that creation of non-nuclear hypersonic weapon can gradually lead to the elimination of nuclear weapons. And my personal view is that a nuclear-free world can be built by 2045, by a centenary of the tragic use of nuclear bombs employed against Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, or earlier than by 2045 if there is a worldwide consensus. And the final brush. So far, the highly virulent COVID-19 pandemic has created so far too many innocent victims amongst almost all countries all over the world, and caused tremendous economic and financial losses needed to fight this horrible disease. It is true. But it is also true that any nuclear conflict will have, God forbid, much horrible consequences across the globe that has done so far the coronavirus per se. As is known, at the beginning of April 2020, more than 1 million people have been infected by COVID-19 and more 65,000 have already died. But if you compare that in the first several hours of an all-out nuclear war, 34 million people will die and 57 million will be injured, so it's uncomparable figures. So all of us will have to bear in mind that to take specific steps to avoid such a gloomy scenario that is looming is badly needed. So nuclear arms should be blocked, and a nuclear-free world could and should be attained by the year 2045. Thank you very much.